Oh, I've always liked this picture. Hey, welcome to Women's History Month. I'm Alex. It's also March 8th, International Women's Day, so I want to take you with me again this year behind the scenes and show you some of the things I do in a typical day as an environmental educator and activist. And something I do every day, no matter whether I'm in New York or here in Paris, is I ride my bike. So since this is History Month, let's do a little history. And maybe take it back farther than that.
Bikes were invented in the early 19th century. And by the late 1800s, when the rear freewheel and inflated rubber tires were added, there was a global bicycle boom. For women in the US, the bike craze was an enabler of a lot of change to women's mobility, independence, and to the dress code. Before the era of cars, a bike made it much easier for women to go out and about on their own. And the advantage of riding a bike in a shorter skirt and even bloomers helped make those new fashions more popular. The bike boom overlapped with the drive for women's suffrage, and those two movements were mutually reinforcing. Look how modern Marie Curie is in her short cycling skirt. And standing there with her bike at the turn of the 20th century, I can't think of anyone better to launch us into a new world of opportunities for women. So fast forward to the 21st century. Women's bikewear has changed, and so have the venues where we bike. Bikes and biking have changed too. Today, there are more than 1 billion bikes on the road. They're the most common vehicle of any kind in the world. And of course now, all these bikes share the road with cars, the vehicle that came to dominate the transportation landscape in the blink of a century. But today, bikes are a big part of a global mobility reset as we seek to create healthier urban environments and to reduce carbon emissions. But rebalancing vehicle traffic to create a bike-friendly city takes a lot of effort.
So today, let's talk about bicycles. Come on, let's go for a ride.
Paris is a great city for bike riding. And Paris is currently doing a lot of work to become even more bike-friendly. We're not yet at the top of the list like cycle-crazy Copenhagen or Amsterdam, but led by Mayor Anne Hidalgo, Paris is working hard to get there. On the to-do list are two priorities: making bike riding safe and making it an efficient and accessible means of transportation. And active transport has co-benefits, like it's great for human health. For safety, we can begin with the things that I'm responsible for. Making sure that I'm both audible and visible with lights, reflectors, and a bike bell. Making sure that I'm always paying attention. And of course, wearing a helmet.
Then there are things the city does to make biking safe and accessible. Cycling groups use the acronym SPRINT as a checklist.
First, safe speeds on the road. The faster cars go, the more dangerous the road is for cyclists and pedestrians. So dropping the speed limit creates a huge increase in safety at relatively low cost. For example, on all but a handful of streets in central Paris, the citywide speed limit is now 30 kilometers per hour. That's 19 miles an hour. Are the drivers annoyed? Well, they shouldn't be. The average speed on Paris streets before the change was only 12 kilometers per hour. Protected bike lanes are a big change, and probably the one that requires the most intervention. There are several different ways to create bike lanes, and you can find them all in Paris. The simplest is just a painted bike lane on the side of the road. In Paris, one-way streets often have painted counterflow bike lanes. That's not my fave, especially with cars parked in the bike lane. Bike lanes are often separated from traffic by temporary barriers, or vehicle lanes can be permanently given over to bicycles. A third approach is to create entirely new dedicated bike lanes, like here on the border of the Seine River. Finally, streets can be closed to cars altogether, and that's the case on the Rue de Rivoli, all the way from Place de la Bastille to Concorde, 4 kilometers away. And this isn't a minor road closure. This is one of the premier retail streets on the entire planet. One lane is still open for bus, taxi, emergency, and delivery, but the rest is for us on two wheels. Closing streets to cars is an example of a road diet, redirecting pavement away from cars. It's been documented over and over that adding an extra lane to a highway doesn't reduce traffic, it just entices more people to drive. It's a phenomenon called induced demand, and a real-life example of if you build it, they will come. In Paris, the old expressway beside the river has been closed for years, and in summer it's not just a bike lane but a full-on beach with sand and palm trees. And the old access tunnel down to the quay is now a public art exhibition. Switching vehicle lanes to bike lanes should induce a very different kind of demand. So we're cruising in our bike lane and we come to an intersection. Redesigning intersections is another big deal, especially in the US, where intersections and traffic rules like right turn on red are not at all bike-friendly. In Paris, cars cannot turn right on red, but bikes can. There are also special signals just for bikes and flashers to alert drivers to bikes and pedestrians. The city also has to work to make sure that the bike lanes are all connected in an efficient network so that cyclists don't get stranded on bike lanes to nowhere, and we can actually get from home to work or school. Paris has 2 cross-city bikeways as well as bike paths along its 2 main waterways, and a network of bike lanes that connect the city's neighborhoods. Paris has been building out and connecting its bike infrastructure in the city, and one of the newest initiatives is the RER-V, creating bike routes that work like the commuter rail network. This includes adding almost 1,000 kilometers of commuter bike paths that make it safe and easy to cycle into and out of the city. The last letter in our acronym is for trusted data. How do we know that the changes that the city makes are effective, and how do we know that we're meeting our goals for safety, ridership, and accessibility? One way that Paris does this is with automated bike counters, keeping track of how many people pass by every day and the total for the year. We can see, for example, on Rue de Rivoli, that there are more than 500 bike commuters per hour in the morning, and then again in the afternoon. In Paris and its suburbs, more than 5 million trips are made by bicycle every day. Okay, so biking needs to be both safe and efficient, but there are a lot of other things that can make cycling more accessible. First thing, what if you don't have a bike? Well, you could get one used, which is probably the most cost-effective way to ride a bike. But if you don't want to take care of it or don't have a place to store it, a bike share is a great alternative. There are 2 kinds of bike shares, dockless and docked. Docked bike shares are usually run by cities and towns because they require a network of permanent docking stations. In Paris, the Velib network serves both the city and its inner suburbs with 1,400 stations and 25,000 bikes. That's a lot, but it's actually way behind big cities in China where there are bike shares with 500,000 bikes. Using a Velib is easy, whether you want to ride once in a while or almost every day. In Paris, the Velib bikes are part of the public transit system, and the same card that gets you on the train, bus, and metro also gets you on a bike. People like me who have our own bikes, we need a place to park our bikes too. So adding infrastructure like bike racks and even self-serve bike repair stations also helps people get out on bikes. Another way to improve accessibility is to expand multimodal transportation. For example, adding spaces for bikes on trains and commuter rail. And speaking of multimodal, bikes aren't the only form of active transportation. Lots of people prefer 1 wheel to 2, or maybe 3 wheels. Or even 8 wheels. Using a bike to commute uses two wheels to accomplish the two goals of active transport. But you could ride just for fun, and one way that the city of Paris encourages this is with its monthly Paris Respire, or Paris Breathes initiative, where the center city is closed to cars on the first Sunday of every month. And here too, the city collects data to show how different the environment is with and without cars. These are nitrogen dioxide measurements that compare air quality on a Paris Respire Sunday with average Sundays. The blue zones show how much the nitrogen dioxide concentrations decrease across the city during the traffic-free hours. Everything we've looked at here is part of rethinking the way we use streets in urban areas. Should they be exclusively for cars, or can they be closed off either temporarily or permanently for rollerbladers, pedestrians, and cyclists? The data we collect allow us to assess what the good ideas are and what needs improvement. And many of the co-benefits of urban cycling are already clear. Local air pollution is improved when cars are replaced by bikes, and global carbon emissions are also reduced as transportation is a major source of CO2 emissions. Physical activity improves human health. Researchers have documented both physical and mental health benefits associated with riding a bike. It's a win-win. For all these reasons, cities all over the world are making changes to become more bike-friendly, making bikes affordable, accessible, safe, and convenient.
So active transportation, like riding a bike, is great for your health, it's great for the health of your community, and it's great for the global environment. And no matter how many barriers might be in our way, there are just as many solutions.